Hey everyone. Welcome back to Awakening with Ali. I'm your host, Ali, and I'm so excited for today's guest. I have such a special soul friend and just a powerhouse woman, you guys. I love this girl. I've known her for quite some time, and we're going to just get into some really deep, beautiful conversations. And you guys probably honestly already know her, but I'm going to reintroduce her because maybe you don't know the new version of her, shall I say, the actual version of who she is. I have the beautiful Amber Lee Lyons, and she was the former Chakra Girl host and all things Chakra Girl, if you knew her. And I had been on her show many years ago, and she is now all about God and the supernatural. And she is the host of Bible Curious podcast. I recently just did an episode with her there. So you guys will have to check it out. And she is the co-founder of Prison Lifestyle Co. Jewelry, which I'm wearing my beautiful little prints right here. I love it. So
Beautiful.
I'm just so excited to have you here, Amber, on my show. And like when we were saying on your show, what a journey it's been in our friendship and in our lives and all we've gone through. So maybe we start there because this is called Awakening with Ali. And I would love for you to share like a little bit of who you are and how you awakened. And then we can just dive into all the things and I'll ask you some juicy questions.
Yay. Well, first of all, happy to be here. Well, gosh, the devil is messing with us in all ways
I was
possible.
not so happy you're here.
Yeah. Okay. So I have just always been a seeker. God has always been planting the seeds with me, trying to call me in ever since I was a kid. I did not grow up in any kind of faith-based household in any which way. So I just was always seeking. I always wanted to go to church with my friends, and I made my mom let me go to this Bible camp and all these things. And of course, high school happened. You find boys, you find partying, and it just all kind of falls to the wayside. But actually, I will say in high school, I was still seeking. I was still going to church when I could with certain friends. But yeah, it didn't stick. And then the new age just came at me like wildfire when I was in my early 20s. And that is where I lived for years. And that is what I really formed my identity around. And I always want to say, like, I never want to like shame anyone or like make anyone think that they're wrong or evil for being attracted to those practices, because at the end of the day, everyone that is seeking those practices, I mean, I think mostly everyone is actually just seeking God, but
Mhm.
there's just so much deception going on that we're actually being pulled away from God. So
Yeah, well
I did,
said.
and I did not know that. I again, like I thought I was talking to God. I thought I was connecting to God, but calling it the universe most of the time. And yeah, there were many things that ultimately brought me to God. But I think the number one thing where I was like, okay, I'm not going back was a dream that I had, which was a visit from an angel that told me the story of Moses, which I had never heard. Even when I was a kid and everything, I was going to church. I had heard the name Moses. I did not know the story of Moses.
Mm.
And told me the story of Moses and told me a bunch of other things. And then I started just researching and being like, oh my goodness, like these are Bible stories that are being told to me in these dreams or in these meditations. And I was like, okay, I'm going to lean into this, started listening to sermons, but then I was still doing a lot of the new age stuff. And then I just started to feel conviction around it once I actually started reading the Bible. And I was like, oh, like they're really calling out astrology and witchcraft and all of these things as being demonic and being idolatry and something that is pulling you away from God. And I did not know that until I read the Bible. And yeah, it is in the Bible. Like people, I don't think people realize that. People, I think, are just like, well, these people are just overboard. They're just not, they don't understand astrology. They don't understand these other practices. They don't understand that we're trying to connect to God too. I'm like, I get it, but it is written in the Bible. So I made the dedication to be like, I'm going to only stick with the Bible for 6 months. I'm going to drop all these other things and see how I feel. And I never turned back, and I never needed any of the other things. And that was probably about a year and a half ago now. So,
Wow. So
and
would you
that's when I
say you awakened to the Bible?
totally 100% awakened to the
Cool.
Bible. And
Yeah.
I definitely dove into the Bible very quickly in my faith journey. I think a lot of people, it takes that, like, that's kind of, it's hard to read. It's hard to
Oh, it is.
understand.
I'm there. So yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of just dove in head first. Was like, I'm reading it front to back because I want to understand what it says about the things that I've been doing. And so that's really, I was kind of dissecting it, looking for those things, and also obviously wanting to understand who Jesus is and all of that. So yeah, I really like dove in with the Bible first, which is kind of interesting and a different way of doing things. But yeah, it's been real.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So you said, a lot of people like take their time to get there, which I honestly have, and I'm still
Yeah.
like taking time to read
Yeah.
through. So what would be something you would say since you dove right in and we're like, I'm gonna read this like front to back? What would you say to someone who's listening and it's like, yeah, it just seems really like intense and intimidating to like get in there and read it because it isn't the easiest thing to read. Like, what would you tell someone?
You know what's interesting is now when I pick it up, it's like, how did I not understand this? This is just normal English. Like it's like God speaks to you through the word, and when he's ready for you to understand it, he will make it clear as crystal.
Mm,
So it will become easier as you're spending time in the word and spending time with him. He will just give you that wisdom and knowledge to understand it. Now I could be reading something that was total gibberish to me back then, and I'm like, I don't know. This is just, this is how people talk. I don't know.
yeah. No, I love that you said like it makes it crisper. It's
Mhm.
true though. The word is living. The word
Yeah.
is the most powerful. And I think that's kind of like the best deception actually Satan has against everyone is like that people aren't speaking the word. Like how we were saying when I was on your show and you were asking me like what do I do every day for, my daily prayer and practice? And we were talking about the armor of God and, speaking about putting the blood over you and calling in the highest white Christ light, like I think that simple things like that, you don't realize like that is from the word of God, and God is going to protect you and further stabilize you in times where you might need, you really do need that extra stabilization. And we're pulled back to think we need something else, but really it's right there. It's the word, like you said. So for you, when you like went through the Bible and you kind of awaken, and like you were saying, you were reading through about astrology, you were reading through about, things that are demonic. I'm not going to lie, that's been a hard one for me. Like I
I know.
have read a lot about it. I also have been a part of a lot of things friends of mine do, and and I know who they are and I know their heart and I know they know Jesus and I know they know God, and it's
Yeah.
very interesting, and they break it down for me and they're like, okay, for astrology, for example, they're like, you see what's going on with like the stock market crash, like in 2008, Pluto made
Yeah.
this move and this equals this and this is why this is happening. And it's interesting, right? It's like, okay, I'm curious to you, like, is it demonic because of the people who are using it, and the way that the occult can use it to create darkness and create havoc in our world, or is it just straight up demonic because God doesn't want us, to know it, to touch it? Like, I'm just curious to your perspective because it is something I have been personally dealing with and struggling with and going back and forth on over the last.
Yeah. So what God has shown me is that it isn't astrology is indeed real. Like I agree. Like if you
Yeah,
look at your birth chart and you look at it's
yeah,
real. Like the thing
right,
it's like I'll 100%.
right.
But it's worldly. It's when he
Mm,
create well, like the it's I think anything math and science is of the world.
sure.
God transcends math and science.
Yeah, supernatural.
So there's no if this then that to understanding God's miracles.
Yeah,
They're quantum. So astrology is a very like I think astrology is the matrix. It's like we're in this web, and that when you are actually in relation with God, you're no longer in that web.
chills.
And I've had people say this to me before, and I used to always question this. Part of our purpose, I believe, is to transcend the qualities that are told are ours because of our sign. So our birth chart, it's like, yes, all these things can be true, but they're also things that we need to release and wash away and let go of. Because
Sure.
if we are wanting to live in God's miracles, we can't have the planets telling us to do something if that's not what
Totally
God
agree
wants
with you.
that day.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I love that you said that it is worldly, because you're right, God is supernatural and is of the quantum and is of miracles.
Yes.
Um, and so yeah, it's very interesting how you break it down. And I agree with you. I think it's like, again, it's not necessarily idolizing or doing something because the planets are doing this, so now you can't do
Yeah.
this in life or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily. I feel like people that call it like demonic, especially in the Christian space, like they're just
Yeah.
saying like straight out, period, it's demonic, and
Yeah.
that's where I have a hard time. Where I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
No,
yeah.
I
So I'm
hear
just
you. I
curious
hear you.
your perspective. Like, I mean,
Yeah. I
obviously,
just,
I would love to know what Jesus's perspective of it is. Like, in the flesh to speak out, but maybe one day in my heart I'll hear that. But it's just something I'm curious, because I feel like we see this a lot, right? Like, especially online, where we're both in
yeah.
the online space and we're content creators. Like, I'm sure you see, like I do, all the time, people hosting events around, different things that are going on astrology
Yeah.
wise. There's constant talk of it. And it's kind of become a big trending thing, to be honest.
Well, and I think I think it's rooted in fear. It's like, I need to
Mm.
know what's going on because I don't have faith. Like that's, I know for me,
I love
when
that.
I
Okay.
was
Say it
in
again. Yeah.
really into astrology, like that's what it was. It's like, it's almost from a place of fear and trying to like figure it out. And there's no faith in trying to control things in that way. And then
Preach.
there's also the side of it where it's like, okay, if your horoscope says you're going to do this, I know that's an overgeneralization. Like no one's
Sure.
reading the Cosmo horoscopes, but like if your birth chart
Yeah.
says something's going on, then and again, I believe manifestation is real. That doesn't mean you should be doing it. It works. I can tell you it works,
Same. Yeah.
but it's the same thing. Like you're subconsciously manifesting these situations because you are intertwined into that web and you've been told that this is how you are and this is how things are going, this is where the planets are, so that's already subconsciously in your mind and then that gets played out for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because essentially, instead of going with God's vision, right? And what God's plans are for you.
Yeah.
It's like I saw like a meme that it was like God's plans and then like your plans. And it's like
Yeah.
God has so much more for you. But if you're continuously creating what you think your plan should be, then God can't hand you essentially the keys to that like over fulfilling life. And so
Yeah.
for you, I'm curious, because you said you like, for those that don't know you, you were huge into manifestation. Like I used to do
Mm.
manifestation stuff with you years ago. Like you had, chakra girl, all the things.
Mm.
What would you say now, someone coming out of someone who was manifesting all of these things all the time, to where you are now with awakening to the Bible and what your life looks like now? I guess what is the difference for you? And what would you say to someone who's coming out of that space that is awakening to the Bible and to the true supernatural living God?
I think the number one thing is surrender. Like there was no surrender in my manifestation game. It was like, I'm going to write down my goals 10 times a day and only think about them. And do you know how stressful that is? Like to try and control every
So
single
stressful. Yeah.
thing. So number one, being able to surrender is brings so much peace. Secondly, it's exactly what you said, Ali, about God's plan being so much bigger for you than your plan. So there's things that I manifested in my life that ended up completely blowing up in my face. And I think that when we're manifesting something from a place of like an egoic desire or a flesh desire, then it again, like manifestation works. It definitely can work, but there's usually a price to pay. Like they say,
Wow.
like selling your soul to the devil is a saying because that's exactly why there's always a price. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
you
no, he'll always come back for that gift.
he'll
That's
come back. He will either come and take it away from you and you'll
yeah,
be worse off, or
yeah.
he'll take something else away. Like it's never just a gift. Like from God, God's miracles are gifts. From the devil, it's a deception, like a deceptive
Yeah.
exchange.
Oh yeah, deceptive exchange. That's so true. It's true.
Yeah,
It's like you are, and like you're given anxiety. Like I know for me, like heavy anxiety, stress,
totally.
postpartum
Yeah,
depression, like you right. You like all of a sudden you take that on, and I'm curious for you from bringing that up. I know you used to like get really stressed out about a lot of stuff, and you had a lot
yeah.
of heaviness all the time on your heart. Now that you've stepped into this space, what are you experiencing?
I'd be lying if I said it was always easy, but I
No,
will
of course.
say then like when they say God is the rock, like that is the best way to describe how I feel. There is an anchor in my life that I will always be able to come back to, that I can always have faith in, that I know will always turn things around. And it won't always be as fast as I want. But God takes the things that the devil meant for bad and turns them into something good for you. And
Mm.
I've seen it. And I think now when I do get into those times of anxiety, it's not like I need to manifest this. And anxiety comes into your life when you're wanting something different. Like when you're looking at your life, your present situation, and wanting something different. That's where anxiety comes from. So if you can be in the contentment and the glory and the presence of God as often as possible, that discontentment isn't there. And when the anxiety comes because things aren't exactly the way you want them to be, which is fair, we're human, there's that trust in knowing that either A, it's not meant for you, or B, if it is, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen on God's time. And it's like the more peace you can have, the faster it's going to come, rather than the more
Yeah.
you can force it or control it or, write it down or put it on a
Force
vision
it.
board. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
love that. And I think you're right. I think that's a huge piece is the surrender. I think for so
Yeah.
many of us, it's so hard to surrender because let's be real, like the matrix, the programming, everything that's around us teaches us the exact opposite. Like
Yeah.
you have to work, work, work. You have to force yourself through. You have to pretend, fake it till you make it, like all these things. Right. And it's like none of that is rooted in surrender. None
No.
of that is rooted in faith. It's the complete opposite.
Yeah, and this is the number one thing that I work on. And I remember I was going to bring this up. We just had you on my podcast. You were saying something about just when you have those moments in your day where something's not going as planned, blah blah blah. My tendency is my flesh tendency is always to be like, I'm going to figure this out. And
Mhm.
then I'll feel so much peace that I can be with God and spend time with God. It's the opposite.
Opposite.
You
Yeah.
don't figure it out on your own. Talk to God, and then it will be figured out. And you might need to wait, and it might be uncomfortable, but you're going to create a big old mess if you get in there and start meddling around with things.
It's true. That's so real. And I appreciate that vulnerability because it's true, right? Like the human of us, the flesh of us, whatever you want to call it, like
Yeah.
that's what we do. Like we're like, how can I fix it? What do I do right now? How do I
Mm.
change the situation? And it's like, what does that do? It just brings you more anxiety, more stress, more of a whirlwind, like all the emotions, right? And you just get caught up in that chaotic energy. And then you don't have discernment to make the right decisions from that space. That was me for so long. It was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm controlling this, and now this is happening, and now this came in front of me that looks like it's a solution, and then I'm going with that solution, but it's not that solution.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. It's like, okay, take a step back, surrender, talk to God, give it to God. It literally says in the Bible, give it to God. God will take care of it, whether it's not when you expect it to, but when God will. And then it's like, and then you'll see the miracles, then you'll see the
Yeah.
help that you need, right? And so I'm curious when you said, you've seen it for yourself, if you don't mind sharing of maybe an example of where you've seen like the miracles in your life and you can really say like, I know God. So I think this is a really kind of heavy but also like super important conversation that a lot of people right now, especially with where the world is and what we're experiencing and going through, so many people don't have faith. So many people are like, how could there be a God? I don't know God. Like I know religion, but I hate religion. Like there's just so many conversations of this right now, right? I'm curious for you, how do you feel like you know God, and where have you feel like you've seen miracles in your life show up to give someone else that faith and to awaken them to the true supernatural God?
I think I first met God when I was in grade 6 at Bible camp, and I felt the presence of God. And at that time, I didn't know that that's what it was, but I would always recall that feeling. And when I like that alone for me is enough. Like
Yeah.
that feeling when you're on a walk or you're kissing your child or your dog or you're looking around your messy house and your happy kids are running around and your husband's reading the newspaper, and that you're feeling God's presence, and in your mind you're like, what more could I want? Like, what
Mhm.
more could I even ask for? And like, I have that even when like your kids aren't like, take the kids, the husband, the house out of it, when you're by yourself and you just feel God, you're like, this is it. Like this is it. There's nothing else that I need.
Oh,
And
full body chills.
I never, me too, me too. And I never, like, when did I ever really have that? It was like there's such a difference between that feeling and the shallow dopamine hit that comes from the instant gratification of an accolade or a
Mm.
goal being reached
Don't I
or
know it?
whatever the other thing is. It's like there's such a difference in the feeling physically, spiritually, mentally. And I think for me, that is the miracle. Like that is the thing that's like, oh, this is real. Like this is what it is. And so, and then that's where like the discernment can come in. And because if it's not that, then I don't want it anymore. Like if it's not that feeling, I don't want it.
Oh, I just got God bumps. That's huge. If that's not that feeling, I don't want it. That's so true. It's like we as a society, no judgment, but we do, like myself
Yeah.
included, we look for instant gratification with everything. I mean, let's be real. Amazon shows up that day, right? We all have Prime. Like we
Yeah.
expect it that day. Why is it 2 days late? I have Prime, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
so guilty of that. Your
Totally.
your phone, like they texted me. Why haven't they texted back? They just got my text. Like all these things are instant gratification for us.
Yeah.
That when like we're actually in the presence of God, like it's the absolute opposite of that. It's like the overwhelming feeling of that peace, like you said, that anchoring
Mhm.
that you receive. I love that because it's true. I've had those moments too where I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at my life and I'm watching everything around and I'm like, wow, thank you, God. Like I have more than I could need. I have more than I could ever ask for. And you know, and I think it's funny, right? Both came from kind of that material space of like I used to have to have all the things to
Yeah.
feel fulfilled, like all the
Mhm.
red bottom shoes, all the
Yeah.
bags, all the things, right? And there's nothing wrong, of course, with having those things, but it's like when those things take over your life and that's what's giving you peace and that's what's giving you like the joy and the fulfillment, like that's when it's like, oh no, we're the farthest away from actually having faith and having peace than we realize.
Totally. And I think this is still something I have to deprogram because I think in new age spirituality, we're doing it to change our physical world.
Mm,
That was my reason for doing it. I want to do these things and chant these chants and do these yoga poses and do this, that, and the other thing to change my world,
mhm,
my outer world.
mhm,
And the hardest thing for me to remember is like, no, Amber Lee, you're not just praying because you want things or material changes in your life or more happiness or whatever. There's a deeper reason. Like there's a purpose, there's a connection to God, there's an awakening, like you're a part of it. You've got a purpose in it. It's like,
yeah,
and this is hard for me because I'm used to my spiritual practice being about my immediate world.
of
And it's not
course,
necessarily something selfish. It's like happiness in my marriage, a house, like whatever. Like
right.
it was always kind of about that. But now it's not. Like it's like when we can see that that's what the matrix has just been programming us to want this specific life, where it's like I wish I could come on and be like, yeah, as soon as I started praying to God and I went from new age to the Bible, $1 million landed in my lap and this
For
changed and
me,
I
quite the
lost
opposite. I
20
would have broke.
pounds. Yeah. Like, like I don't have that testimony, but like, but I can,
Yes,
but I'm like,
yes.
yes, but I just want to just deprogram that. It's like that need of the physical proof, and that's the point. And it's like when we can deprogram that is when we'll get the physical proof,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know.
major. Yeah, major chest. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. It's like we're looking for the constant again, gratification, validation, like the
Yeah.
constant, like, where is it? Is it in my bank account? Is it in front of me? Is it the house? Is
Yeah.
it the car? But you're
Yeah.
right. It is such a matrix programming. And I feel like that's actually why, like, we're seeing, I mean, of course, there's many reasons, but that's why we're seeing so much divide right now. I feel like just collectively, I feel like that's why we're feeling so much anxiety and so much stress across the world is because everyone's been so fixated on the materials, on
Mhm.
instant gratification. Like it's like you've been so focused on the deception that
Yeah.
you don't know what to do when all that's starting to fall away. It's like
Yeah.
where's the stability? Where's the, I keep telling my husband, Justin, and he's awakened over the years more and more from my own walk. And he believes in God, but he's not as deep in the walk as me yet.
Yeah,
And,
that's the same as my husband.
yeah, like
Yeah,
I got to take him to a few church services, and he has
same.
felt the Holy Spirit and has, felt good and everything. But it's like, yeah, and I feel like the masculine, to be honest, I'm curious for you, Amber, with your husband, like, do you feel like it's harder for them to allow that deprogramming and like allow Holy Spirit? There's something about the masculine. I
Yeah,
think.
I have heard that it's like I was listening to a podcast that did mention something that it is harder for males just because of like the male ego, because it's
Mhm.
harder to let go of like control
Right,
or
because that's their
their
thing, right? Like they take care of you, they take
yeah.
care of the house, they take care of the
And
kids.
that's why in the Bible, like it is a woman's duty to demonstrate her relationship with God to her husband if he's not a believer. And that we have this important role to play in our relationship. And yeah, it says that obviously the ideal situation is the man to be the spiritual leader in the house. But if she's a believer and he's not, then her role is to just not to nag him into it, not to force him into it, but to be the demonstration of
Yeah.
what that beautiful relationship looks like with God.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good point. Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think that's been also a huge thing God's humbled me on, being a mom of three, is like
Yeah.
God's constantly telling me to like steward my house. I used to get so frustrated by like the dirty dishes in the sink and the
Yeah.
laundry everywhere. And I used to get so annoyed. And God finally spoke to me and was like, treat these things as how like you're stewarding your home. Like you're
Mhm.
honoring these spaces, you're honoring these things you're doing because you're grateful to be a mother. You're grateful to
Yeah.
take care of your husband. And like when I finally like switched that ego mentality around of like, I get to honor my home. I get to make this a peaceful space. I get to like bring this harmony and bring God into our space. It changed the way our home felt. It
No.
changed the way everyone showed up. Our health changed. Like everything changed. And I'm like, wow, like it's so true what you were saying. It's like that stewarding, that belief,
Yeah.
that faith, and so yeah, so going back to what I was saying, like with your husband, I'm curious for you as you go deeper on this walk, like have you noticed like he's coming more a part of it? Like, what have you been experiencing? Because I feel like that's another big piece to this too. Is a lot of people are experiencing in their marriages, of course, by design. Satan's really trying to separate marriages right now. What would you say for like your journey right now with your husband that you've been able to do that's helped you guys come closer in this walk and what you're going through?
Yeah, so he has come to church with me a few times. We're watching The Chosen.
Oh my gosh, you just gave me chills. I just with a couple this past weekend with my
Oh, did
husband
you?
at the pool, and they told us we have to watch it. We were in that
Yeah.
we were
So
in the pool with them, and they're like, "You have to watch Chosen." I'm like, "Okay, I've now heard this like 7 times." God speaking to
yeah, the
me.
first couple, I will say, like he felt like I knew everything. I'm like, oh, I don't know who he kept being like, who's that? Who's that? Like, I don't know. It's my first time watching this too, babe. Like, so like I think he maybe almost felt like maybe insecure that he didn't know, but like the first couple episodes it is a little bit difficult, but then it started to be more clear like who each person was, and it's just like these are the disciples, they don't know each other yet, they're kind of, so it's like that was the kind of thing we kind of like were sorting it out together and like
Yeah.
googling like who's this person. So yeah, so that's been good. And then he listens to worship music,
Okay,
so
that's cool.
yeah, so we have like our playlist and he's always the first one to put it on. And what else? I'm getting baptized this weekend, so
And I'm
he's
so
like planning a
excited
little,
for
thank
you.
you. So he's planning a little shindig barbecue at our place after. So yeah, he definitely supports it. And yeah, I just kind of I said the other day, I was like okay, so there's this movie that I'm embarrassed that I've watched this. If you watched it, I love you. Nacho Libre. Do you
Oh, I've
know the
watched it. Yeah,
okay,
Justin's had me watch it. Yeah, that's my husband's humor. So yeah,
okay. There's this scene where Nacho Libre tells his friend, he's like, I'm worried about your salvation. His like strong accent. He's like, you're not baptized? I'm worried about your salvation. So now I just always say that to my husband, like in a joking way.
that's cute.
Um, so like just like we just kind of like joke around about it a little bit. But yeah, so and I did ask him, like I was like, oh, like what would you ever get baptized? Like, what are your thoughts? He's like, it's just not something like I feel ready for. Like I feel like, is gonna be a part of my life right now. But I enjoy where this is going, just, being on the side
He's
of what
supportive
you
of you, which is super
totally.
important.
And he's like, I believe in, he's like, I believe, I was like, do you like believe the things? Like when we listen to sermons and stuff, he's like, oh yeah, I believe all of it. It's crazy. And he like knows who some of the different pastors are, and he'll want to put a sermon on if we're driving. So like,
That's cool.
so yeah, it's been good. But I just don't try and pressure in any way.
Yeah, no, same. I know. I learned that too, that like the nagging, I think with anything, honestly, with men. Like years ago, I remember I used to like nag Justin not to drink as much and like not
Yeah.
to like eat as much and all that. And it would just be huge fights all the time. And then when
Yeah.
I started working on like my gut health and I started doing supplements and changing things, and like all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'll try it. I'll do it with you. You know,
Yeah.
like that easing in, right? Again, I like that
Totally.
stewarding of them seeing you. You said the demonstration, like you're
Yeah.
demonstrating, you're embodying what you want to be, right? How you want to be like Jesus, how you want to walk in, have your sacred temple and take care of you and your home. And then they're like, oh, okay, let me try this. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it makes sense. And I like that. I like that he listens to worship music. Justin doesn't like worship music. I mean, not to, I don't say he doesn't like it, but I think it like annoys, like he'll listen to a few songs and then I think he gets like annoyed. It becomes too much. It might be my playlist. I listen to
I
like
was
some
gonna say,
band.
I'll give you my playlist. It's so good. Like
Okay,
it's
send it
like
my way.
alternative. Like
My kids
it's
love mine, but
yeah,
it's pretty like it's very like Jesus. Like it's very
no,
heavy. Like yeah.
mine's like it's like cool, like alternative,
Of
like
course it is because it's you.
yeah, that's what we would listen to. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like for example, when I was having my home birth with Abel, and back in 2022 at the house, and that's probably also honestly, I feel like I got a little bit of PTSD because I had it on for hours while I was in labor to try to like stay calm and stay
Yeah.
like peaceful and right because I had no drugs. My first experience having a home birth, that was a whole other world of leaning on faith with God. But like praise the Lord, I had Abel at home. But like like I had the music on for hours, and I think he got a little over it because it was like
Okay.
I needed it to go through. I was in
Yeah.
labor
Yeah.
for 12 hours, so I needed it. But like
Yeah. He's like, I'm done
you'll have
here.
to
Yeah,
send me your
I
playlist.
will.
So what else would you say would you feel like you said for like a year and a half now? What else do you feel like has changed in your life since awakening to the Bible, since awakening to the supernatural God? Like what else would you want to share for those that, especially because you were like, I mean, I would say you were as deep, if not deeper, in New Age than I was. Like,
Yeah.
what would you share? Because I feel like I have actually a lot of listeners, to be honest, who probably are in New Age right now, and I have a lot of people who are walking away and who
Yeah.
are still torn and trying to figure out what they're doing and what's right and what's wrong, right? And like we're never judging or shaming here. We're just talking
No.
about our own testimonials and like what we've gone through,
Yeah.
what we've awakened to inspire others. So, what else have you noticed from coming from that space to here?
Yeah, so you and I have talked about this before, actually. The demonic attacks, the sleep paralysis. So that pretty much subsided for a good like more than 6 months. Like I want to say probably almost a year. But then recently there have been a couple, but it's like my authority. I can
Yeah.
immediately like in the dream can push it away,
Mm.
can rebuke it and get rid of it. So I would say that is such a big one. I just think there's, like I said, just that overall overwhelming peace
Yeah.
and
I have to tell you, it's
knowingness.
444 angel numbers on the clock. I just got chills. I like literally
Ugh.
just saw as you're speaking. I'm like, oh, the angels are saying yes.
I just listened to a whole thing about why angel numbers are best are not good. But I'm again, that's one that I'm torn on. I'm like, how could it be bad? They're angels.
Yeah, I've heard this too. It's interesting you bring that up. Again, like this is where like right we get deeper in this
I
journey.
know.
And it's hard for me honestly because I really do believe like God created it all, and it's like how
Yeah,
are you receiving the signs? Like
I
like
know.
for me when my grandmother passed away in 2013, like and I was so dark and I was in such a heavy place and I really was disconnected from God. Like the first thing that started bringing me back to anything was just seeing the number 222 because that was the day she died, and I kept
Yeah.
seeing it over and over and over again to the point where I was finally like, all right, let me look this up. What does this mean? And I started
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
researching, and praying about it. And I think again, I feel like if it's from the demonic side or you're just whatever loosey goosey in it and you're not like
I know.
intentional about it, but I feel like seeing 444, like to me it's like that's a God miracle. That's like a
Yeah.
confirm to me personally, it's like a
Yeah.
God miracle, God
Yes.
confirmation. When you were just saying what you were saying about the attacks, like I'm like, oh, God is saying yes, you speak it down, like he has
Yeah.
you, like you're safe,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's personally how I see it.
But I know, and I agree with you. That's one of the things. This is one of the things I'm torn on because I do believe that God does send signs.
Yeah.
I
Says it in
still
the Bible, signs, miracles, and wonders. I mean,
exactly. I still like when I see a white feather, I'm like, oh, that's Jesus telling me I'm on the right path, you know? Like
yeah,
and like if it is or it isn't, if it brings you a little bit of joy and you're not making a big life decision,
yes,
not
yes.
it, then
Totally. Again, not
give
idolizing,
yourself some
not
grace.
like making your life right. And I think that's a huge piece too, right? We talked about this on your show is like you're not idolizing it, you're not worshiping
Yeah,
it, it's not changing what you do. It's just
right.
so it's you're right, you're right. It's like like a way of just receiving peace, a way of being like, oh, there's joy. But I do
A
think it's
moment of
interesting that
pause.
that
Yeah.
came up when you were saying that about the sleep paralysis and speaking it out and having your authority to call it down in your dreams, you know?
Yes. Yeah. 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 And I think that's another thing. Like, I love the supernatural side of the Bible. And I think that's when I first started reading the Bible, I was like, this is dry. Like what? Especially like, gosh, when you're going through like the genealogy and like all that stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh. But I got some books that so what I would do is I would read a full page, so a full page, and then let that chapter finish. So it would usually be like a chapter and a half or like 2 chapters or whatever. And then I would have some kind of godly book that I would then read a chapter of. Or
Yeah,
sometimes I would do a chapter of the Old Testament and then a chapter of the New Testament, just because the New Testament's a little bit lighter. But then sometimes it's a
for
little
sure.
dark in there too. But then so yeah, I feel like for me, I got so the unseen realm, that's a really good one about the supernatural, and they shall expel demons. Like for me, coming from the new age, I feel like those were such they connected a lot of dots for me
Okay.
on the whole concept of energy and spirit and all those things, because I was so in that world before that I was like, there's got to be some kind of connection. So I think that has been okay. So another like reason, because you kind of asked like what is one way you knew that it was real, it was like these ideas and these concepts kind of came to me, like showing me how they were actually biblical before I actually read the truth in
Mhm.
these books. And I think God is speaking to so many people in the new age right now, telling people stories from the Bible, telling people concepts from the Bible, telling people about the supernatural side of the Bible, and we're not really understanding it. But then once you read the Bible, you're like, oh my gosh, like I already knew that, like that
Right.
already came to me. So I think that's another like such a big miracle of being like, okay, this is real. Like we know this is real.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's really powerful. Yeah. And I think too, like when you're saying that speaking with the new age, I also had quite a few dreams when I was kind of coming out of the new age. And I do think God is speaking to a lot of people
Yeah.
in that space and trying to open their eyes and show them you're in a
Yeah.
counterfeit versus what I'm actually doing.
Yeah.
And I'm curious for you, like when you started connecting dots, like you said, like you go into these books and you start connecting dots. Could you give an example of something that you were like, I knew this in new age, but like here it is now, like with my supernatural like God, like actually understanding how this works, because I feel like this is where, to me personally, and I talk about this a lot on my podcast with other people, like this is where I feel like there's just such a religious trauma. Like
Yeah.
I hate to kind of say it that way, but I do feel that way because I know I felt that way, where it's like people
Yeah.
feel so locked into the religion of who God is versus the actual supernatural living God. Like that God actually does heal today, not yesterday, but today God heals. Like
Exactly.
God does create miracles and will continue to create miracles. Like that
Yeah.
these are real things, right? So like for you, when you say you knew some things like in new age and then you started connecting when you came over,
Yeah.
to like actually knowing God, what were some things you would share for others to maybe be able to awaken to or plant some seeds?
Well, I think, well, even just little things like my entire morning practice before even anything to do with God, anything to do with the Bible was literally basically the exact same as it is right now that we spoke about.
Oh
Like,
wow.
so it was filling myself up with light, cleansing myself with a different colored light, filling
Mhm.
myself up with spirit, connecting to or putting on armor, putting on a protective shield, connecting to the 13th dimensional consciousness. Like those things that I was doing was actually just me trying to connect to God. And it was like, I feel like it was him telling me, okay, these are some things you can start to warm up to, because these are the things that are going to help you connect to me just in a different way. So I feel
Okay.
like there were so many like similarities in like the messages and the stories that I was getting. And then even like the way that I was understanding like the Holy Spirit, I feel like my perspective in terms of like intuition really changed in the kind of later days of my new age journey, that were really more so me understanding the Holy Spirit, because I'd never understood it before. No one ever spelled it out for me. Like, even though I went to church a few times when I was in high
Oh my
school,
gosh,
like,
that's the thing too. Like, I feel like the church is so, I mean, not every church, obviously,
yeah,
but the church is so stale. Like,
it
you're not
is.
getting, like, your spirit is not getting filled up like so many times. You're just getting,
Mine's actually really good, the one that
well, I'm
I
not
go
talking about my
to.
current. I'm talking about my, like,
Okay.
growing up, like,
Oh,
as a
growing up. Yeah,
Catholic.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
for
yeah.
me personally, I just remember, like, it was
Yeah.
so stale. It was so dry. I never felt like it was
Yes.
getting filled up or getting the wisdom that you're speaking about. Now, yes, I'm getting that from my current
Well,
church.
and
And
I
I can
think I
see.
think especially people who grow up Catholic, because that is boring. Like, that is so boring. Okay, so I should actually mention my husband grew up Catholic.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's why he had in his mind that, oh,
Yeah,
this
no,
is the
no
way
go.
that it is.
That was Justin. Justin and I both grew up
Yes.
Catholic, and
Oh, you
when we
just
met, yeah, and I'm half Jewish because my dad. And when we
right.
met, like literally when we got engaged and we're getting married, we're like, we're not getting married in a church. Like we were so
Yes.
anti because we were
Against
so
it.
done with it. Like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's like, I think this is a new movement of Jesus without the religion. And like, I'm
yes. Oh, I love
seeing
that.
everywhere, like I'm seeing like people wearing shirts saying like pro Jesus, anti-religion. And I think that's maybe why a lot more people are I don't know, I think it's like a gift from God that we're starting to realize this. And like, it says in the Bible, like even when Jesus is explaining his parables, he's like, not everyone is going to get them, and they're not supposed to. Only the chosen people are going to get them. Only the people that I want to come to me now are going to get them. If I don't want to come for you, if I don't want you to come for me for another 10 years because you have some lessons to learn, I don't want you to understand it now.
Right.
And I think that as a collective, he's showing us all now, finally, what a relationship with him is without religion. And
Yeah.
that's what we're waking up to.
Ooh, oh, I just got full chills. That's powerful, but it's true. I agree
Yeah.
with you. I think it is. It's like we're finally starting to see like it's not about religion. It's not about the legalism. It's the
Yeah.
true relationship, the true living God.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to bring the collective peace, like
Yeah.
actual peace and faith,
Yeah.
versus like just being so turned off by the religion and who's right and who's wrong and the division that's
Totally.
continued to go on.
Yeah.
What you spoke to is really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I've always said too, like if I was the devil, what's the first thing I would attack? Religion. Like I
Yeah.
would get in, I would infiltrate, I would make people creeps. I would
Yeah.
make people, you know what I mean, get stabbed at church. Like I would make all these terrible things happen so that people don't want to go there. I would make people gossipy. I would make people have all this like red tape and all this weird stuff at churches. So it's like,
Right.
he did his job, and now
For
people are like,
sure.
okay, it pushed people away for a long time, and now we're like, okay, wait, but there is truth in this, and I'm coming
Yeah.
back to it in a deeper way without needing this church. But I just go for the music.
Me too. I was gonna say, yeah, the truth will set you free, like period. But like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's true. I same. Like Justin says that he makes a joke, like when we go, he's like, oh, it's like I go to a concert, like I love it. Like he
exactly,
gets like into it. Like,
exactly.
it's like there's such a presence. And it's interesting. I had a dream recently where God showed me people are gonna be running back to the correct churches. And when I say correct, the ones who are actually speaking the true living God.
Yeah, yeah,
And showing me like how you were saying the movement, like people are going to be, as things continue to kind of shake collectively, that people are going to be running, like looking for that actual real relationship and receiving real healing and knowing
mhm,
who he actually is,
yeah,
versus a version of him that the world has painted him as.
yes,
So
exactly.
yeah, it's really interesting. And I love it also too that you said like, like the Catholic, like there's something not just boring, but there's something just so dry. And like I don't know. I've just talked to a lot of Catholics lately who are like, man, I just have so much trauma from being in that religion. Like there's just something where you're shamed constantly and you're judged constantly, and you just feel like my mom said to me, actually, this was really my mom and I were having a deep conversation recently about God when I told you I was on vacation, my family, when we were texting. And she said to me, she goes, I believe in God, but I have a really hard time, even going back to church at this point, because I remember when my parents got divorced, and my mom had always, gone, to church her entire life. And then when she got divorced, like they told her she couldn't come back. And I was so angry that they told her she wasn't allowed there, that I was like, frick you, I'm not going either,
Yeah.
and I could understand that, I could understand you being like, oh, F off. I don't want any part of this if that's how you're going to be.
Yeah. But then it's like, look at Jesus. Like he was hanging out with prostitutes and murderers and
Mhm.
like,
Yep.
like he's not gonna be like, you're divorced, you're out.
Yeah, totally.
Like
Right.
that's the thing. It's like what like who made that rule up?
Yeah, I know.
Wasn't
It's true.
God.
Wasn't God. No, and you're right. How
Of
you
course, he
say
doesn't
how
want
they,
us to get divorced. Like, he doesn't want
right,
that, of
right.
course,
Of course.
but he also has so much mercy.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you said about the churches, I agree with you. Like, I think you put it perfectly when you said like, what would you do to like take away from that? And I think that's been the greatest deception of all. Is like for
Yeah,
years the churches have been, pushing essentially kind of false teachings and not the
yeah,
realness of God, and having
yeah,
people be stirred away and judged. And so yeah, I mean, anyone who's listening right now, like I hope this gives you inspiration to like maybe just keep yourself open. Not saying you have to go. I say to my kids all the time, I love to go and I love to take them, but I also want you guys to know, like when we pray at home and we worship, like that is just as impactful and just
yeah,
as meaningful. It's just about sometimes community, right? Or wanting to be in the
yeah.
music or wanting to be in that space. I don't know. What is it for you when you go?
Yeah, it's the music and it's like this sense, it's like the group worship. Like I think he's so happy when he sees people come together. Like that's what it is. And then also I always learn something and there's always something that I'm like, oh, this sermon was for me. Like. So I think, that's another way God can speak to us and give us our signs and give us our miracles is in that type of environment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. So good. So good. Oh my gosh. This was so much fun.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap this up? I feel like we're going to have to do like a part two on both of our shows.
I know. Totally. I
There's
was even
so much to say
I
in
know.
this space.
There's
Like,
so
and I
we need like a different topic every week and just riff.
something seriously, like I just feel like because of like I thought there's just so many similarities between like what we've both been through and
Yes.
what we're still walking through. It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it's very powerful. So yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have to stay tuned. There'll definitely be some kind of part two. But yeah, is there anything else that you'd want to share with us? And then of course tell us where we can find you and follow you and check out all the good things.
Yeah, I think like just number one, have grace with yourself because this transition doesn't happen overnight. There's still things in my life that I know that need to fall away and it's not always easy. And there are going to be things that either we cling on to or like God just wants us to be patient. He's going to remove it in his way. And, yeah, like not having to know is the hardest part and not having all the answers is hard, but patience is one of the fruits of the spirit and one of my hardest lessons. So, yeah, I think that's the main thing, mercy and patience, no matter where you are on your
Love
journey.
that. Mercy and patience.
Um,
Amen to
yes.
that.
Yes. And where you can find me is my podcast is called Bible Curious Podcast. So it's on Spotify, Apple Music. My website is biblecurious.co, Instagram, Bible Curious Podcast, and then mine is Amber Lee Lyons.
Amazing. Well,
Oh, and I
I'll
just
link
did
in the
like a
show.
prayer audio. I recorded like my morning and evening prayer, and you can get it as just like a freebie on my website.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I'll definitely link that for everyone so you can check it out. Everything will be in the show notes, you guys. So thank you for tuning in and listening. And thank you, Amber, for being here and sharing your journey and wisdom and story. I think it's so inspiring. And I think many people are going to benefit from this episode. So thank you.
Yay. Thanks, Allie. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. All right.
Bye.
Sending you all love. See you all soon. Bye, everyone. Bye.